All right, as we take a look at number 2, first thing I'm going to do is plug in 3 for x and 2 for y. So the quantity of the opposite of x minus y minus the quantity of x plus y. Now as I go to simplify, if I have a negative minus a negative, anytime I have subtraction, I change it to algebraic addition. So that becomes plus a negative. So negative 3 plus negative 2 is negative 5. Minus 3 plus 2 is 5. Again, I'm dealing with subtraction, so I'm going to change that to algebraic addition by adding the opposite. Negative 5 plus negative 5, which is the same as negative 5 minus 5, equals negative 10. As I take a look at number 3, rather than doing number 3, I'd like to do a sample. If we have the square root of h lies between, let's take a look at a number line here, 1 and 5/10 and 1 and 6/10. So if that lies between, then that means the square root of h is somewhere between those two. So the first thing I would take a look at is, what do I have to take the square root of that would give me 1.5? And what would I take the square root of that would give me 1 and 6/10? If I know what I'm taking the square root of to get those values, then that would help me decide possibly what h could be. When we take a square root, mathematically we are finding what number multiplied by itself will give me that. So if I know the answer is 1 and 5/10, to find out what I'm taking the square root of, I could take 1 and 5/10 times 1 and 5/10, which would be 2 and 25/100. So that tells me that here I'm taking the square root of 2 and 25/100. Now to find my other side, I could take 1 and 6/10 times 1 and 6/10, and that would be 2 and 56/100. So that means I'm taking the square root of 2 and 56/100. So if the square root of h is between them, what that would tell me in turn is that the square root of h would have to be less than 2 and 56/100, but greater than 2 and 25/100. So I know it would be a value between those two. Use that same process to come up with the value of k. Taking a look at question number 4 on the inside, we're working with a dilation, reflection, rotation, translation. 3 of those are rigid transformations. So as we're looking at what will make something congruent or similar, keep in mind that congruent means that it has the same shape, which means that it would have congruent angles. And it also has the same size. So that means the same side lengths. If something is similar, it's still the same shape, so it has congruent angles. But what happens is we see a change in the size, so we say that it has proportional sides. So as you take a look at your different transformations, we need to decide what would make something congruent and what would make something similar. And there are multiple correct answers for this. Moving on to number 6, as we go to simplify this, we are combining like terms. Notice that everything here is adding and subtracting. When we add and subtract, exponents do not change. So a 2x squared can be combined with a negative 4x squared. A positive 2 and a negative 4 would be negative 2x, and it remains squared. If I were multiplying or dividing, then the exponents would change. My next like terms is I have a negative 3y squared and a positive 6y squared. A negative 3y squared and a positive 6y squared would be positive 3y squared. 2x squared and 3y squared are not like terms. Therefore, that's all the further we can simplify that. As we take a look at number 10, first thing we need to tackle is grouping symbols. And within our grouping symbols, we also have some exponents. So I'm going to go to the innermost grouping. 5 plus 3 is 8, and 8 squared would then be 64. I'm going to bring down the rest of my problem. I still have some grouping symbols to go. So I'm going to take 64 minus 6, which would give me 58. Now this is where I saw the most errors. Most of us tried to add 3 plus 2. But when we have two things written side by side, such as the 2 and the 58, that's multiplication, and multiplication occurs before before addition. So this would be 3 plus 2 times 58 is 116. And then last but not least, 3 plus 116 is 119. As we take a look at number 11, and we're trying to figure out what equation has the same solution, the first thing that each of us should do is work to simplify the original equation. So we're going to begin by distributing the fraction of 1/2, then combine our like terms. Get your variables to one side of the equation and work to solve it. As you guys go through and you simplify this original equation, it will help you to find your correct answer.